He's a former Solicitor General of India, a senior advocate in the Supreme Court, and he was recently given the honor of being invited to become one of the judges of the Supreme Court by the Chief Justice of India. It's a very special honor. It doesn't come very often in the career of any advocate. But now Gopal Subramanium has decided to turn down this very specific honor. And he joins us now to tell us why he believes that there is perhaps a vendetta against him, perhaps a lot of things being said against him, which he says are not right at all. Thank you, sir, very much for speaking to us. This is a very rare honor. It's a very unique honor. But you believe that the autonomy of the office of the Chief Justice and of the Supreme Court itself is being affected because question marks are being raised on your nomination when in fact this decision was taken at the level of the Chief Justice's office.
Well, the thing is that this is an honor undoubtedly, and not only to be a judge of the Supreme Court, but possibly to end up your career as a Chief Justice of India. It's an outstanding honor. And I thought over the matter for about 48 hours. There was, of course, some opposition in my own family by way of reservations about it, because it's a different kind of life when you are a judge. Ultimately, I took the invitation, I accepted it. I must say, in fairness to the Chief Justice of India, the tremendous enthusiasm with which he received my acceptance, and in almost a record time, they processed my recommendations and it was sent to the central government. The Intelligence Bureau, which happens to be also not unknown to me, because I've been their lawyer for, again, 3 decades, both in the NDA government and in any other government. They have always come to me for advice on important, sensitive issues. They gave a completely clean sheet on the 15th of May. But obviously the Prime Minister at that time, because he was an outgoing Prime Minister, thought it appropriate that these are recommendations which should be dealt with by the successor government. I must also add that I had absolutely no forecast or anticipation of any kind of reservations about me, even by the successor government, because I thought that there was very little to question about me. My track record is sufficiently compelling. I've almost out of 34 years of my professional life, I've spent about 4 years without charging a rupee in different cases and causes which I believed in.
But sir, let me interrupt just so that we can,
yes.
I can get you to respond to some of the allegations.
Sure.
One of the allegations is that you had convened a meeting between CBI officers in the 2G case.
Before that, Vishnu, you should know, how were these allegations first of all discovered? When the new government was about to come in, I'm told that they gave directions to the director CBI to rake up dirt against me. And therefore, the dirt digging exercise began. And ultimately, I mean, they tried to find out whatever they could. Now, let's take up one by one. I want to answer each one, and that's the reason why I withdrew from the office, because I wanted to clear my name. And I'd had enough of this kind of slandering and absolute gibberish being printed in the papers. I had nobody from the judiciary to defend me. I had nobody from the judiciary even to tell the government that stop this.
Do you feel let down by the Chief Justice?
I feel let down by the judiciary as an institution, because they obviously have not even respected their own processes. I mean, if a government and a judiciary does not know how to respect, how is a consultative process about the candidature meant to be discussed? And that you have newspaper stories which are planted. I have found out that everybody says that, well, these are orders from the top. Now,
so there was a dictat?
It does look it was a dictat. Look, it's very clear to me. I happen to know so many of the lawyer ministers in this government. I happen to know the law minister. He's an outstanding lawyer. He's a friend of mine. I happen to know Mr. Jetli. We're from the same school. He has supported me in my most difficult moments. He's encouraged me. There's no question of any personal animus of anybody in this government. I mean, I know Mr. Rajnath Singh. There's so many. But, as I said, there does appear, and I have no evidence to identify the face behind it. But somebody has said that, no, we just don't want this man.
So who has said that?
I have no idea. I have no evidence about it. I have no evidence about it.
But who do you believe?
I cannot say. I cannot say, and people are very tight-lipped. They don't want to say.
What about the cases that you have fought? For example, the Sohrabuddin Sheikh case.
Well, now let me tell you about Sohrabuddin Sheikh case. I was very disappointed with the report on the Hindu that I targeted Narendra Modi. I didn't. Actually, it was so untrue. The report was wrong. First of all, Sohrabuddin's case, I got involved in it purely fortuitously. I was sitting in a courtroom waiting for one of my matters Lodha. I was in the last chair in the courtroom. This case was being argued by Mr. Salve, Mr. Harish Salve, for Rubabuddin Sheikh. And Mr. Salve said that, look, this is something rather serious. This needs to be investigated. At which stage, Justices Chatterjee and Bhandari, they looked at me and they said, could you please help us and give us your assistance in the matter? I happily volunteered. So I had a copy of the petition. It showed that there was a letter to the previous Chief Justice of India by Rubabuddin Sheikh where he had complained about a possible encounter. So I went down into the archives, picked up that letter, and I found that there was also a response from the Director General of Police of Gujarat. It had some annexures, and those annexures, carefully, when I read them, they suggested murder. Because it was murder, I told the court that you must issue notice to the state of Gujarat. They did it. After which I said they must produce this wife, this lady called Kosabi. Where is she? They must, by a habeas corpus would lie.
In other words, you were acting independently.
Totally.
Right.
There's no question of any Congress or anybody having ever interfered
Again,
in my
the
functions.
allegation is that you were, among others, targeting Amit Shah. How do you respond to that?
Amit Shah?
Yes.
To be very honest with you, I don't know who is Amit Shah. I actually started the case. And in the first instance, you should know, after I came to know that there were 2 deaths, my first instinct was not simply to hand over the case to the CBI. As an amicus curiae, I exercised judgment to show faith in the Gujarat police. So a special investigating team under the Gujarat police was constituted, under the orders of the Supreme Court, to actually conduct a fair and a thorough investigation. Now, what happened was that during that so-called investigation, the most important eyewitness is liquidated.
Right.
It is at that stage I asked for it to be shifted to the CBI.
Right.
Incidentally, it is CBI which spoke about Amit Shah. I mean, I had no idea of Amit Shah.
But let's talk a little bit more.
And let's understand this. I mean, this is so puerile. It almost looks like childish. That people don't understand court proceedings. People are willing to believe the worst which can be said about a person. Take the case of a bail of Amit Shah. And I said that, look, I considered all factors. The court asked for my opinion. I said, no, his liberty is important. Let's balance his liberty with the needs of administration of justice. So please permit him to be enlarged on bail, but let him stay outside the state so that he doesn't influence the investigation. It was fair enough. And you also need to know that during the hearing of that case, the then Chief Minister, the present Prime Minister, he also asked his advocate, additional Advocate General, to come and call on me out of courtesy. And we had a cup of tea, and I again assured the additional Advocate General that, look here, I'm a Solicitor General of India with a certain degree of detachment and experience, and I'm not in any political business.
But sir, let me ask you about another specific allegation. What about the allegations in the media about the 2G case?
Oh,
and I'll tell you what the allegation is.
I know.
But sir, for the benefit of our viewers, while you were representing the DOT, you met CBI officials, and the CBI was unhappy with this issue. Your name also figured in the Radia tapes.
Let's do one by one.
Right.
When the 2G case, by the way, I have never dealt with the 2G case until it came up to the Delhi High Court. In the Delhi High Court, I appeared for all parties, including the CBI. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is that when it came up to the Supreme Court, the Prime Minister or no one in the government had even remotely suggested that Mr. Raja was under any form of suspicion. I want you to know this as a matter of fact. Thirdly, when I had a conference with the CBI, it was not in the presence of anybody else. It was 3 CBI officers, one of whom unfortunately is no longer alive, and me in my little study. I gave them a tumbler of coffee and we discussed. And it was I who asked a question that, do you have anything against any minister?
Yes.
Because I don't want to take an inconsistent stand.
Right.
I can't be seen as defending a minister who is under a cloud of suspicion. those officers told me that on the basis of the investigations which they then had, there was no material so far. But actually, later, I must tell you that I also wrote to the director CBI that this is only for the purpose of giving a correct picture in the court. I mean, it will look ludicrous that the Solicitor General of India is defending a minister while the CBI has found material against him. And I must say, in fairness, the director CBI came up, and ever since then, they have always been taking my advice. But most important in Radha's case, which you should know, is that there was a file which was sent up to me from the then Prime Minister's office asking whether the case, the FIR against Raja, should be cancelled. That is, should we close the investigation against him? I, as Solicitor General of India, did write that it cannot be cancelled and the investigation must proceed. And Prime Minister Manmohan Singh accepted my advice. So that is so much for it. Now, when this appeared in some so-called in newspaper, we all protested to the court at this irresponsible reporting. The court chastised the reporter. All this is to be found in the case diaries of the CBI. Now let's come to Neera Radia and the tapes. The first is, I am not close to any lobbyist at all. During my entire career as Additional Solicitor General and Solicitor General, you should know I have never accepted one private brief. Number two, no private client was allowed to even enter my official premises. Number three, I actually drained my own savings for the purpose of keeping up the prestige of the office of the Solicitor General. And I want to let you know, I borrowed 1.75 crores against my assets from a bank to marry of my daughter. Number four, on the Radia tapes, I should tell you that I had to swim because I have a problem with weight gain. And I used to go to Talkatora swimming pool. It was closed. I asked Mr. Parag Tripathi, a colleague of mine who was an Additional Solicitor General, and I said, Parag, I need to swim. I'm putting on weight. And you must understand, Vishnu, at that time, my workload as Solicitor General was 20 out of 24 hours in a day. It was relentless workload which I was doing. I was doing the work of almost 6 to 8 people, and I had no regrets about it. He said that he'll get around, and finally he said somebody will call you about a membership. So the Taj Mansingh Hotel, they called me, my office, to say, sir, if you want, you can come and fill up the formalities and become a member. No complimentary membership. Obviously, I've never taken.
And the allegation is
that I never became a member at all.
So the allegation, so
I didn't become a member.
Just for the benefit of our viewers, this point about the swimming pool is based on an allegation that you used favors from somebody to gain membership over here, and you're denying that completely.
And I want to also tell you one thing else. I want to be fair to somebody whose name is being repeatedly mentioned. Neera Radia, incidentally, happened to come with, I think it was Uday Lalit, many years ago, but even before I was Additional Solicitor General, in connection with the abduction of a child. It was a case in the Delhi High Court. I appeared for her. She paid me a check and it was over. And I must say, in fairness to Neera Radia, she never attempted to interact with me in all this period. And incidentally, it is when this Taj Mansingh membership sort of was being offered. At that time, out of courtesy, the poor lady found out my telephone number from Parag Tripathi and said, hello, how are you? That's all. And otherwise, there's nothing to
Even in the tapes themselves, there is nothing that she says which
on the contrary,
I think it's,
your character. Oh my God. On the contrary, she says that he's a very difficult person ever to be tinkered with. But look, I am not now dependent on character certificates of individuals.
Let's focus on the larger issue now, because you've answered the specific allegations. Why is this happening? Do you see this to be a part of a cleanup by this government? We've seen it as far as several branches of the government are concerned, several appointees are concerned. Do you believe this now extends to the judiciary?
I think the point, Vishnu, is, and I'm now saying this with a certain measure of restraint, and that's the reason why I have withdrawn as a judge. Because I wanted this to be placed in perspective. There can't be any personalities involved. I'm now telling you that Gopal Subramanium is completely irrelevant to the issue which I'm raising. The issue which I'm raising is that you cannot have any person in any government saying, I like these mangoes, I'm prepared to keep these judges. I don't like this mango, I want to dump this judge. I don't think that's permissible under the Constitution. One. Two, what has worried me very greatly is that the government clearly communicated to various judges about their unwillingness to take on my name. I repeatedly offered to the Chief Justice of India that, look here, if you are having any problems or queasiness or anything about me, I am more than ready to jump off the pool.
Yes.
I have made this offer 3 times.
Yes.
And all the 3 times he said, there's no question about it.
Right.
Your appointment is supposed to be going through.
But since then, what has happened?
Well,
you feel betrayed at some level by the Chief Justice?
Now let's understand the facts. The first time something appeared was on the 11th of October in Economic Times. It said that government has got some reservation about me. I read it quietly. The next morning I found that the Hindu said government has rejected. And government is nobody to reject a judge's candidature. But there was a certain kind of pungency with which the article was written that to suggest that there was something wrong with me, and they're going to take it up with the Chief Justice through the Law Ministry.
Right. What happened next?
Now that was all false.
Yes.
The point is, even till date, there has been no file sent for reconsideration by the government.
There is no file that exists against you, is the point that you're trying to make.
Well, look here, now there is no file, but I'm more aggrieved by one other thing.
Yes.
That if a judge who is in waiting is being considered, it is expected both of the government and the Supreme Court of India that the processes to deal with this candidature are kept in some amount of sacredness. It's not that he's meant to be bashed around in the media. So I'm sorry that the Supreme Court did not stand up for me. Therefore, I have withdrawn and I have decided to fend for myself. I also want to tell you that I know perfectly well, I'm confident of any reiteration of my candidature because I'm very confident of my character. But I don't want the executive government to be in a position to speak of the character of a man who in 34 years of professional life has trained 325 juniors. 2, I don't also want to cede the ground to any other person to sit in judgment over me like this. Please remember one thing, Vishnu. CBI was my client. They have been consulting me till the year 2014. You ask any of the directors from the time of C.V. Narasimhan, Vijay Ramarao, anyone, they've all consulted me and I'm known as a person of professional rectitude.
No.
I'll give you one example.
I don't think we are doubting that. I don't think you need to
I understand. Go ahead.
Right. I'm just trying to make the point that the larger allegations that you make, or if I can use the word insinuation, is that the judiciary at one level has been infiltrated by specific government interests, and secondly, that the government, in a sense, is out to get you. This is my takeaway from what
there is a very strange coalescence.
Where does this leave you as a legal officer, sir?
Oh, well, it's a good question. I want to let you know this, that it's okay for somebody to dislike me. It's fine. I deal with the emotion, and I'm dealing it in a very dispassionate way because, after all, we are all forgiving human beings.
Right.
But the point is that when you have 4 people in one list, if a segregation of 3 names happens without the consent of the Chief Justice, without the consent of the Collegium, the government does it unilaterally, and the 4th man has nothing against him. He's simply waiting. And am I to watch a spectacle of 3 people being appointed? And mind you, if I don't withdraw today as a lawyer, these appointments can be termed as constitutionally illegal because they suffer from impaired judicial independence.
Where does that leave you, sir? Because this is perhaps the most stinging criticism of the institution that anybody in your position and your seniority
I have not made
has
any
ever
criticism. I'm stepping out because I need now to tell.
So it's a fine line between criticism
Yes.
and critical analysis.
Well, no, I'm offering advice. Let me put it this way, because I love the institution. Otherwise, I would not have been willing to become a part of it.
You're offering advice.
I'm offering advice. I'm offering advice to the executive. I'm offering advice to the judiciary.
So you're going to be back this side of the bench. You're going to be fighting cases as a lawyer.
Well,
you're happy with
after
that.
some time, because I need to have what is called a cooling off period, which is a part of your therapeutic process that I have to do. But I have some advice, and I have advice for both. First, please don't allow back channeling to discuss appointments of individuals as judges. It will put the executive in an advantageous position. It will put the judiciary in a very weakened position. 1. 2. The executive must know, forget Gopal Subramanium, he's no longer relevant, I've withdrawn. So forget about me. But remember, judiciary is not meant to consist of people who are likable. Judiciary is not meant to consist of people whom you can rely upon as safety valves. This is a complete negation of the judiciary in its very essence. And therefore, I appeal to the Prime Minister, and I'm saying this again with a measure of respect. I'm saying this with a measure of humility. That, sir, please remember that it is good for you to have people who interrogate governmental actions with fearlessness. And certainly, I can tell you very honestly, I'm not biased against any government. I'm not political. In fact, when I was Solicitor General in the Congress government, and I used to write opinions in the government, I used to write opinions questioning governmental action every day. And sometimes people didn't like it. But I told them that the role of a Solicitor General is somewhat analogous to that of a judge. If you know our Constitution, the article, namely 76, which says an Attorney General should be eligible to be a judge of the Supreme Court, by convention, the same principle applies for a Solicitor General, which means you are actually equidistant. You may advocate the cause of your government, but you are also duty-bound as an officer in the administration of the law and justice to give them correct advice. And you must be able to question if they're doing anything wrong. That's the standard I've always followed. And I'm not going to depart from my standards. Ever, ever. And I'm very happy, and I wish to say this. Justice Lodha did me a great honor by inviting me to be a judge, to be a possible Chief Justice of India. I can tell you that that anybody would this is not a small appointment, it's a very great honor.
Do you believe you were in line to become Chief Justice?
Of course. I mean, if the rule of seniority followed, and if I had good health, and if Providence helped me to live, answer is yes. Answer is yes.
You are forfeiting an opportunity to become Chief Justice of India.
Yes.
Because you believe that your grounds are very, very substantive. You believe that your independence is more important than anything else, and more than your personal independence, it's the independence of the institution that you represent. Right?
Most importantly, Vishnu, the point is that life does not begin with being a judge or Chief Justice of India. Life begins with what you stand up for. And when you stand up for something, and I remember my friend Zach Yaqub, who was a former judge in the South African Constitutional Court, he said, you know, Gopal, it's just not enough to have this thing called principles and ideas. You must know, you have to take the consequences of it. And I'm prepared to face consequences.
What consequences do you believe there could be against you?
The consequence was a certain degree of disinclination, and I'm happy to respect it. In a democratic process, I'm happy to respect even dislike. But I think the only protest which I have against the government is they need not have undertaken the so-called media route and writing all sorts of rubbish. I mean, what prevented any one of them from accessing me to say, look, there is something about you which doesn't go well with us?
Would you have accepted that?
Pardon me?
Would you have accepted that had the government come to you, or would you have said this rests with the Chief Justice, let him decide?
Well, I would certainly have assessed, that in case I became a judge, would I begin with what I call as a trust deficit? It's important.
Yes.
One of the reasons for my withdrawal is, even if the collegium reiterates my name and government is compelled to appoint me as a judge, and there is a warrant, and I get appointed, I think it is a completely bad start for any judge to begin with a trust deficit of this magnitude.
Right.
And I don't think it's worth it at all. It's not worth
Okay,
it.
fair enough, sir. You've conveyed a lot of very important perspectives over here. I'd like to thank you very much for speaking
Most
to us.
welcome.
I think the important point mentioned by Gopal Subramanium, and perhaps the largest picture over here, is one of respecting the autonomy of institutions. Has the judiciary also let Gopal Subramaniam down? Has the government let him down? Does the government have any business to be involved in the selection of judges for the Supreme Court? Larger issues, but for the moment, Gopal Subramaniam has made up his mind. He was in the running, perhaps according to seniority, to become Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, but he says none of that. He's going to continue being a lawyer in some time.